Hello. Hello. Very good afternoon, everyone. Anyone there? So, welcome back to the correspondent banking section, the CAIIB BFM classes. So, this is part 2 of our series. Am I clearly audible to you? Anyone can you please let me know? Audio video is clear? Can anyone please let me know? Is the audio video clear to you? Alright. So, I am assuming that it is clear, right? So, in the last class, we have discussed, in this last class of BFM, we have discussed what is correspondent bank, right? Correspondent banking section. In correspondent banking section, we have discussed correspondent banks. We have discussed 3 types of correspondent banks, which are your Nostro, Vostro and Loro accounts, right? Then we discussed about the special rupee Vostro account, okay? Special rupee Vostro account, if you remember this. And I told you the difference between the originally existing Vostro account, which is rupee Vostro account, and this special rupee Vostro account, right? So these were certain things which we have discussed. So today we will be discussing some important definitions, because in the future course of time in this series, you will have the classification of NRI accounts, right? One of the most important topics in your chapter, the NRI accounts, okay? And case studies and questions are directly asked from the NRI account section. But before understanding the NRI accounts, difference between NRI accounts, you need to understand some definitions. What are those definitions? The definitions of, say, NRI. Who is considered as non-resident Indian? As per which rule? Who is considered as person of Indian origin? Okay. Who can be an overseas citizen of India? OCI card holder. So you need to know the differences and the rules and laws related to them. Only then you can differentiate between all types of NRI accounts which we have here. So after understanding the definitions, we will be looking into this section. This is very important. Direct questions have been asked in the exam, right? NRI accounts, all the types of your NRI accounts. But to understand these NRI accounts, you first need to understand some of the definitions. So here are the definitions. So that's why the title is some important definitions, okay? I know it is, although bit monotonous, okay, because these are just laws, but we have to do it, right? We don't have any shortcuts to hard work, okay? So first thing is PIO. First thing is PIO. You all have heard these terminologies very frequently, okay? They are in public discourse, in news. So PIO, basically all these constitute what? Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora, as we know, right? So first we have is your person of Indian origin. Who is a person of Indian origin? By which act do you define? What are the clauses? All these things. So PIO, person of Indian origin. PIO means, so you have to listen carefully, and these things are just to be remembered, okay? When you read them number of times, you will get a catch over them, okay? First is PIO, that means a person of Indian origin. So he or she is a person resident outside India. First thing, residing outside India, who is a citizen of any country other than Bangladesh or Pakistan, or any country as notified or specified by the central government. Okay, the list can go on as per the central government's rules and regulations, okay, as may be specified by the central government. So a person residing outside India, okay, satisfying the following conditions: who is a PIO, who is a person of Indian origin, such a person who is residing outside India, first thing, and satisfies one of the or say satisfies all the following conditions, okay. So, or one of the following conditions, that person will be known as your PIO, okay, person of Indian origin. So, person of Indian origin is a person resident outside India, has to satisfy the following conditions. But remember, you need to remember here that who is a citizen of, the person might be residing outside India, but the person is a citizen of any of the countries, okay. But here what is provided is that the person can be a citizen of any country other than specified by the central government. This is I am focusing because you need to understand this, okay. This is important. So conditions applied that other than Bangladesh and Pakistan or any other country specified by the central government, okay. Now what are the conditions which the person who is residing outside India needs to fulfill in order to be classified as person of Indian origin, okay. First condition, see, A, who was a citizen of India by virtue of Constitution of India or by the Citizenship Act of 1955. So, first criteria would be here, either that person was a citizen of India, was, okay. Now if he or she is not, but he was or she was a citizen of India by virtue of what? Either by the Constitution, by virtue of Constitution of India, or by the clauses, sections mentioned in your Citizenship Act 1955, okay. Now, which article of your Constitution deals with the citizenship? Anyone? Which articles of your Constitution of India, our Constitution, deals with the citizenship? Anyone? Do you know? Which all are the articles dealing with citizenship? So basically your article 5 to 11, okay, 5 to 11 dealing with your citizenship, right. So this is the first criteria, that who was a citizen of India by virtue of either Constitution of India or by Citizenship Act of 1955. Now in this case that is mentioned, being a citizen of India will be mentioned as, you know, Act number 57 of this Act of 1955. So that is particularly if we talk about Act number 57 of Citizenship of India Act 1955, okay. So first criteria, or, so either he was a citizen of India as per Constitution or Act, or, so either you satisfy this condition, or second one, who belonged to a territory, who, so you have to satisfy either of these conditions, right, not all. So who belonged to such a territory that later became part of India, right, when we gained independence, okay. So who belonged to a territory that became part of India after 15th August 1947, or, so either this, or who is a child or grandchild, or a great grandchild of a citizen of India, or the person is a child, grandchild or a great grandchild of a person who has been a citizen of India, okay, or of a person referred to in the clause A or clause B. So you understand this point, that either the person is child, grandchild or great grandchild of a person who has been a citizen of India, either this, or child, grandchild, great grandchild of persons specified in A and B, clause A and B, these two. So the child can be either of citizen of India or these people specified under clause A, which is this, and clause B. Got this point? Right? Now, what is the fourth condition? The fourth criteria which can be there for classifying you as a PIO? Who is a spouse? Who is a spouse of a foreign, who is a spouse of foreign origin of a citizen of India. So the spouse might be of foreign origin, but spouse is of a citizen of India, okay, or spouse of foreign origin of a person referred to in clause A, B or C. That person can also be classified as person of Indian origin. Are you able to understand this? Right? So basically, spouse can be of a foreign origin of a person who is citizen of India, first thing, or foreign origin spouse of a person mentioned in either of them, clause A, clause B, clause C, these people, right? So these are some of the criteria. When you satisfy either of them, you can be classified as person of Indian origin or PIO. So you should remember these criteria. You just have to read them again and again to remember them, okay? Right? So when we will be classifying the NRE accounts or the NRI accounts, then you will get to know that these definitions will help you, right? Now, so we have done PIO, okay? Now comes definition of non-resident Indian, NRI, a very frequently used term in our families, in our neighborhood, right? But what is the exact meaning of an NRI? We don't know that. So what are the clauses? How do we classify a person as an NRI or PIO or OCI, right? So let's see. For NRI, definition of NRI, non-resident Indian. The meaning of non-resident Indian needs to be understood both from point of view of Income Tax Act and from point of view of your section 4 of Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. Now, this is important, okay? This is important, that the definition of resident or non-resident, you have to understand from 2 points of view, okay? So we are classifying people as non-resident Indians on 2 bases. First, as per for the taxation purpose. First, for the taxation purpose as per the Income Tax Act, okay? And the second, as per the Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, okay? FEMA, which we call as, in short, as per the Foreign Exchange Management Act. So we'll be classifying NRI on the guidelines provided under both Income Tax Act as well as FEMA Act. So you remember the guidelines or the criteria from the both the point of views, right? So first let's see that how Income Tax Act differentiates between a resident Indian and a non-resident Indian. Okay. So section 6 of your Income Tax Act 1961 defines a non-resident Indian based on the number of days a person stays outside India. So what is the basic criteria which is used in your Income Tax Act to define a person as non-resident Indian is number of days. Number of days you are residing in India. So this is the criteria used under Income Tax Act 1961. Okay. So before understanding a non-resident, we have to see what are the number of days criteria provided by Income Tax Act 1961 for the person to be called as resident first, okay? For the person to be called as resident. So what are the number of criteria you need to have, or the number of days you need to have to live in India, which serves as a criteria for Income Tax Act for you to be classified as a resident. Now when you do not satisfy that criteria, in that case you will be called as non-resident Indian. Okay. So first criteria under Income Tax Act says, if an individual is in India for at least 182 days, if an individual is in India for at least 182 days in the preceding financial year. In the preceding means which was there since if you calculate it from the present time, right? So the later one, okay, preceding financial year, say for example 2023, 2022-23 for consideration in 23-24. So if you are considering this person for the purpose of taxation as resident, so you have to be there in India, live in India at least for 182 days preceding in the preceding financial year. So if we are considering this criteria for say financial year 2023-24, so this criteria will apply for the financial year of 2022-23, the preceding one. Right? Okay. So this is first criteria, at least living in India for 182 days in the preceding year. Second is if an individual is in India for at least 365 days. If an individual is in India for at least 365 days in last 4 financial years. In last again preceding, okay, in last 4 financial years. For example, 18-19 first financial year, then 19-20 second one, 20-21 third one, 21-22 fourth one. Okay, so last 4 financial years and at least 60 days in the preceding financial year. So if you are calculating for 2023-24, the preceding financial year will be 22-23. So you should be living in India for at least 60 days in the preceding financial year, immediately which preceded, right? And for living for 365 days at least in past 4 financial years. So this is the second criteria, okay. First is at least 182 days in the preceding financial year. B, or the second one is at least 365 days for past 4 financial years, okay, and at least 60 days, 365 plus 60 days for the immediately preceded financial year, okay. So these are the 2 criterias for the person to be classified as a resident of India for the purpose of taxation as per Income Tax Act 1961. Okay. So is this clear? So we have understood what does a resident means right now. So we have discussed it right now. Okay. Now non-resident. So we know the criteria for a person to be called as a resident of India. Now when you do not satisfy these criteria, you will be called a non-resident. Simple. Okay. So non-resident are individuals, whosoever the individual is, individual not satisfying the condition A or B, either of them. Okay. So you either satisfy this condition or that condition, at least one of them, okay. So the person who does not satisfy any of these condition mentioned above A and B will be treated as NRI as per Income Tax Act 1961. So now you got it. Who are NRIs as per taxation purpose or as per the Income Tax Act 1961, right? Individuals who do not satisfy at least one of them, one of these conditions. Right? Got this point? So this is the classification of resident and non-resident as per your Income Tax Act. Now, there was an amendment done to the provision, okay, and that amendment has a new provision with regard to this thing, resident and non-resident. What does the amendment says? So amendment effective from 1st April. So this amendment was done, which came into effect from your 1st April 2020. Okay, says if an individual is in India for at least 120 days, if an individual is in India for at least 120 days, but less than 182 days in the previous financial year. So there was some amendment done to these provisions mentioned above, which we have discussed. What was the amendment said? If an individual is in India, residing in India for at least 120 days, but which is not more than 182 days. So minimum for 120 days, but which is less than 182 days in the previous financial year, which just preceded, right, in the previous financial year, and stayed in India for at least 365 days or more in the last 4 financial years. That is the same criteria as we have discussed above, and the taxable income in India of that person, taxable income, the income which is taxable, right? So taxable income of that person in India exceeds rupees 15 lakh in 2023-24, then the non-resident Indian, then the NRI will be treated as resident for the taxation purpose, and the income will be taxed accordingly. Now this is important, right? So there were certain amendment done in this provision. In the above provisions, we have seen that the first criteria as per Income Tax Act was that you at least have to live for 182 days in the preceding financial year. Here in the amendment, you have that, okay, even if you are not residing for 182 days, but at least for 120 days. First thing, so this change has been done, okay, this change. Then other thing is same, that for the preceding 4 financial years, you have to live for at least 365 days. But then one thing is added, that your taxable income in India exceeds 15 lakh rupees. Your taxable income in India exceeds 15 lakh rupees, okay. Then that NRI will be treated not as NRI but as a resident for the purpose of taxation. That NRI will be treated as a resident for the purpose of taxation, and then the income generated here, income of that person or individual, will be taxed by the income tax department. So this is something important which you need to know. I hope this is clear. This is all theory, I cannot explain, right? So we have to understand, we have to remember them as it is, what are the clauses, right? So this is the this thing. Now I hope the NRI and the resident difference is clear to you, okay. Now from the same point of view or for the same purpose of taxation, so still we are studying these definitions from the Income Tax Act 1961 point of view only. We haven't started the FEMA classification, right? So as per the same income tax rules, Income Tax Act 1961, who can be classified as a resident but not ordinary resident? Resident but not ordinary resident. RNOR, resident but not ordinary resident, for the purpose of income tax or for the purpose of taxation. Okay. So these are the criteria mentioned by the same act, that on the basis of these, either if you fulfill either of them, you can be classified as resident but not ordinarily resident. Resident but not ordinarily resident. Okay. So this is another category. First criteria, you should have stayed outside India for 9 years out of the last 10 preceding financial years. You should have stayed outside India, you were living outside India for at least 9 years from the last preceding 10 years from the date of consideration. Are you getting this point, right? First criteria. Or, so either this, or you should have stayed in India for less than 730 days. Less than 730 days in the last 7 financial years. Okay. Easy to remember. You can remember 7 and 7 figure like this. Okay. So you should have stayed in India for less than 730 days in the last 7 financial year. Then you can be classified as resident but not ordinarily resident. Okay. Or a person of Indian origin or Indian citizen with more than rupees 15 lakh income, with more than rupees 15 lakh income earned from Indian sources, stayed in India for 120 days or more in the previous financial year plus 365 days or more in the preceding last 4 financial years, then also you will be able to classify it as resident but not ordinarily resident individual. Okay, right? And the fourth is that you have a status of deemed resident, to be resident, okay, with more than rupees 15 lakh income earned from Indian sources. So this income has to be generated from Indian sources only. Okay, so these are certain criteria you should remember for the individual to be classified as resident but not ordinarily resident. First is you should have stayed outside India for at least 9 years out of the preceding 10 financial years. Clear? Second is you should have stayed in India for less than 730 days in the last 7 years. Okay. Next, PIO or Indian citizen. A PIO, person of Indian origin or an Indian citizen with more than 15 lakh rupees of income earned from Indian sources only, stayed in India for 120 days or more in the previous financial year which preceded, okay, and plus 365 days or more, stayed in India for 365 days or more in the preceding 4 financial years, or deemed resident, you are a deemed resident with more than 15 lakh rupees of income which you earned from Indian sources only. So these are the criteria as per the Income Tax Act 1961 for classifying an individual under the category of resident but not ordinarily resident. I hope this is clear to you all, right? Now, so there is a word deemed resident written over here, deemed resident, okay. Who is a deemed resident? So for the purpose of the taxation, for the same purpose of income tax, deemed resident has also been defined. Who will be called as a deemed resident? Because we have another criteria here that the person is a deemed resident with more than 15 lakh rupees of income. So you need to understand who is a deemed resident, right, as per the same act. So let's see. Deemed resident for the purpose of Income Tax Act, a person who is called as deemed resident will be an NRI. So first of all, the person will be a non-resident Indian, okay, an NRI who is not a tax resident of any country, NRI who is not a tax resident of any country and has more than rupees 15 lakh income in India earned from Indian sources. So who will be classified as a deemed resident? The first criteria is that the person will be an NRI, non-resident Indian. We have seen the criteria for NRI above, right? An NRI who is not a tax resident of any country. That NRI is not paying income tax in any other country. Are you getting my point? Not being a tax resident of any other country means what? Means that for the taxation purpose, you are not classified as resident in any other country as well. Got this point, right? So an NRI who is not a tax resident of any other country and the NRI has more than 15 lakh rupees of income generated from India from Indian sources. Okay, and the status of deemed residency is applicable only for NRIs who hold Indian citizenship and not applicable to PIOs. So you should remember this. This is very simple because the definition started with NRI only. Okay. deemed resident is not a person. They have said that it is an NRI. So the criteria clearly says that deemed resident status can be given to an NRI only. Always remember, okay? It is not for person of Indian origin or for anyone else. It is only for people who are citizens of India and they are not the tax residents of any other country. Are you getting my point? Is anyone there? Can you please let me know you are able to understand or not? Okay, never mind. So this is the thing. These are the criteria which you should remember that are used for giving the status of deemed resident. That would be given only to an NRI, not to any other person. Okay, only to Indian citizenship. NRIs holding Indian citizenship, not for PIOs, because PIOs can be citizens of other countries, okay, apart from Bangladesh, Pakistan, or as specified by the central government, as we have seen, right? So this is the thing. Now moving ahead, in this as well you had an amendment, okay? So amendment to the Finance Act 2020. Amendment to the Finance Act 2020 brings some changes in this category of deemed resident. What are the changes? The changes that a deemed resident in India, which will be an NRI with more than rupees 15 lakh income, from India, and who is not a tax resident of any other country. Yeah, so that was included earlier as well, right? Then a PIO or Indian citizen with more than 15 lakh income from Indian sources can also be considered. So this was added through your amendment. This was not originally there. Okay, are you getting my point? So this was the impact, that a PIO or an Indian citizen can be deemed to be a resident with more than 15 lakhs income from Indian sources by this amendment to the Finance Act 2020. Clear? But originally it was only for NRIs, as I told you specifically, right? So these were the definitions which we have seen from the purpose of taxation or on the basis of Indian Income Tax Act of 1961 of India, right? Okay. Now the other basis of defining these defining these individuals is your FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. So as per Foreign Exchange Management Act, what all are the clauses for an individual to be classified as PIO or NRI? Let's see, right? So as per FEMA 1999, you all know Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, NRI is. So we are looking at all the criteria which are mentioned there under the Foreign Exchange Management Act to classify an individual as non-resident Indian in India, okay? These will be different from the earlier ones because these are mentioned in your FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, right? So as per FEMA, a person resident outside India, who is a citizen of India, okay? So first broad criteria is person residing outside India but is a citizen of India. That is the basic criteria of NRI, right? That is, now what are the sub clauses attached? Indian citizens who proceed abroad, who can be those persons residing abroad but are citizens of India. For what purposes they can go and then can be classified as NRI. So first thing specified here is Indian citizens who proceeded abroad to any country for either employment, for doing job, okay, or for carrying out any business activity, for carrying out any business over there, okay, or for any vocational purpose, any skill which they have, okay, or other purpose in circumstances indicating indefinite period of stay outside India. So whatever the purpose is, broadly employment, vocational purpose, right? Business purpose, but any other purpose which reflects an indefinite period of stay. You don't even know that for how long will you be staying there, right? So this is the thing. Are you able to understand? Or other purposes which have circumstances, of indefinite period of staying outside India. So this is the first thing. That person, on the basis of this, residing outside of India but is a citizen of India, will be called an NRI as per the FEMA 1999. Is this clear? Second thing, Indian citizens working abroad on assignments with foreign government. So you know that many of us go for assignments, right, on the behalf of our governments, right? So they can also be classified as NRIs, Indian citizens working abroad on assignments with foreign governments, government agencies, or with institutions like IMF, World Bank, right? International or multinational agencies like UN, United Nations, IMF, okay, World Bank. So people living outside India as, as citizen of India, working with these organizations will also be able to be classified as NRI. Or officials of central and state governments. As you all know, we have diplomats, we have officials, okay, working on behalf of foreign ministry in various countries, okay, on behalf of Ministry of External Affairs. So these officers of your central government as well as of your state governments, okay, and public sector undertaking deputed, and officers from your PSUs which are deputed abroad, which have been sent on deputation to abroad on assignments with foreign government to fulfill some assignment with any of the foreign government or any international agency or any organization, okay, or posted to their own offices including Indian diplomatic missions abroad, okay. So these people will also be classified as non-resident Indian as per the FEMA 1999. You need to remember this, right? So Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999 says that any person who is residing outside India but is a citizen of India can be called as NRI, but he went there for some purpose which has indefinite period of stay inherent to the activity, right? Second, went as for some assignment from the government, or went on deputation on behalf of, say, central government of India, state government of any state of India, or officers from some public sector undertakings working over there. So these will be classified as NRI, okay. So this criteria, all these three criteria are for a person resident outside India who is a citizen of India, okay. For them, these are the criteria to be called as NRI. But then the other thing, we have a person of Indian origin as well. So for PIO, for person of Indian origin, what are the criteria provided by the FEMA for the PIO to be called as NRI, okay. So a person of Indian origin, not to be called as NRI, but to be called as PIO only, right? Now, what are the provisions? Under FEMA for classification as person of Indian origin? Okay. So, a person of Indian origin is one who is a citizen of any other country. Same thing. Who is a citizen of any other country other than Bangladesh and Pakistan, or such country is specified by the central government. Okay. Satisfies the following conditions. And satisfies the following conditions will be called or will be considered as a person of Indian origin as per your FEMA 1999. right? Now let's see. First thing, first criteria which that person needs to satisfy, that who was a citizen of India by virtue of Constitution or Citizenship Act 1955, same clause as mentioned in the Indian Income Tax Act 1961, which we have discussed right now. Yes or no? Same clause. The first clause in that section was also same, that who was a citizen of India either by virtue of Constitution of India or by virtue of Indian Citizenship Act 1955 and Act number 57 specifically, right? Or who belonged to a territory that later became part of India, okay, after our independence. Same criteria. Third, who is a child or grandchild or great grandchild of a citizen of India or persons mentioned in the first and second clause. So these criteria are almost same, which we have seen in the income tax rules as well, right? Income Tax Act basically 1961. Or who is a spouse of foreign origin, the spouse is of foreign origin of a citizen of India or a spouse of foreign origin of any person mentioned in the above categories. Same criteria again as we have seen in the Income Tax Act, right? Or is a spouse of foreign origin of either of the persons mentioned in clause A, B and C, which are these three. Right? So these will be classified as PIO. So you know that under both the Income Tax Act 1967, as you are able to understand, and the Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, under both the laws, under both the things, the criteria for the person to be called as PIO is same, isn't it? It is same, right? Now, but there are certain other things which the Act specifies. So the basic criteria is same, but there are certain other things which this Act specifies regarding PIOs and OCIs. Okay, so we need to read about them according to FEMA 1999 only. Okay, so first thing is that a PIO will include an OCI, Overseas Citizen of India. Overseas Citizen of India card holder within the meaning of Section 7A of the Citizenship Act 1955. So FEMA says, Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999 says that for the purpose of classifying a person as PIO, person of Indian origin, we also include the OCI, Overseas Citizen of India, okay, card holder, which is OCI as per the Section 7 Clause A of Citizenship Act 1955, which is Overseas Citizen of India as per Section 7 Clause A of Citizenship Act of India 1955. Getting this point? Right? Next, thus, in general, an NRI is a person of Indian nationality or origin who resides abroad for business or employment or intention of employment or some other business purpose, okay, where the stay is indefinite. Then a person of Indian origin, if he has held an Indian passport or he, she or any of his parents, grandparents were citizen of India, right? So broadly summing up the definitions here, right? Then as such, government officials going abroad on posting to Indian missions, okay, to say World Bank, IMF, they are also NRIs. Similarly, tourists on brief visit to foreign countries are not categorized as NRIs. This is to be remembered, okay? Got this point? So these are general points summing up the thing which we have discussed. These points are basically summing up the things which we have discussed, the classifications of NRI and PIO and OCI. But there is something peculiar written here, okay? So in general, you know that as per FEMA, NRI is who? Going for a purpose, for a job, for a business, for a vocation, for a skill, right? Which has indefinite period of stay or official posted from on behalf of Government of India with any agency, with any foreign government, etc. But the tourists which are there on trips, on vacations, for a temporary shorter period of time to countries will not be considered as NRI. This is something very important you need to remember here. Okay. So, tourists on brief visit to foreign countries are not categorized as NRIs as per FEMA 1999. You should remember this. Okay. Tourists on brief visits to foreign countries are not to be categorized as NRIs. Students going abroad, students also go abroad, right? Students going abroad for higher studies are considered as NRI specifically as per RBI guidelines, even though their visit abroad is not for indefinite period nor for business or vocation. So, you need to remember this. This is important. Okay. What not is there sometimes becomes more important. Okay. That who all are there who will not be classified as NRI. We have read about every clause which is there to be for the individual to be classified as an NRI. But what are the clauses for not to be classified as NRI? So, you should remember this point that any foreigner who is on a trip to a foreign country for a brief visit, okay, just going for vacations, will not be classified as an NRI according to FEMA. But a student, now you would say that students do not have indefinite stay, okay, student go for say 1 year, 2 year course over there, 1 year, 2 year period of time, isn't it? So, what about those students? But FEMA does not classify those people who do not have indefinite stay as NRI. But then specifically as per the guidelines of your Reserve Bank of India, Central Bank of India, the RBI. So, on the basis of specific guidelines by RBI, students going abroad for study are also considered as NRIs. You should remember this. Okay. Students going to abroad for study are also considered as NRI specifically as per the RBI guidelines. As per the RBI guidelines. Even though their stay is not for indefinite period, but they are classified as NRIs. Who is not classified as an NRI is your tourist, okay, on a visit, who are on visits for a brief period of time. I hope this is clear, right? Then a spouse who is a foreign citizen of an Indian citizen or a spouse of a person of Indian citizen, a spouse of a person of Indian origin, PIO, okay, is also treated as PIO for the purpose of opening of bank accounts and other facilities granted for investments into India. Remember this point. Now, there are marriages, right? So, you have spouses. Now, if there is a spouse who is of foreign origin, but the person married to the person of Indian origin, okay, so a spouse who is of foreign origin but married to Indian origin person, or a spouse of a person of Indian origin, a spouse of a PIO, okay, is also treated as a PIO. So, that person will also, that spouse will also be treated as PIO, person of Indian origin. Remember, okay. So, a spouse who is a spouse of an Indian citizen or spouse of PIO will also be treated as PIO. For which purpose are we saying this? For the purpose of opening up a bank account. Remember, not for the purpose of taxation, okay, for the purpose of opening up a bank account. Are you able to understand this? Right? Because you know the spouse has to do transactions as well, and other facilities granted for investments into India. Bank account and other facilities which you require to send money to India and all these things, right? So, for that purpose, the spouse for opening up a bank account will be considered as a PIO. So, facilities given to PIO banking facilities given to PIO will be given to the spouse for that matter as per FEMA. Did you get this point? Yes or no? Right? So, banking facilities to the spouse will be given as per this criteria of FEMA, and for extending the banking facilities or say opening up of bank account, for that matter the spouse mentioned here will be considered as a person of Indian origin. Will be considered as a person of Indian origin. Okay. So, these were some of your definitions which you need to remember. I know these are complicated, these are a lot of laws written, guidelines written, clauses written, which become very cumbersome to remember. Okay, we generally tend to forget these clauses, but with number of times of revision you will be able to retain them. You should retain them because direct case studies can be asked on these things. Okay, right? So these are important, and with multiple revisions you will be able to remember. Now, why did we try to understand all these definitions? What was the purpose? Because now the topic which we will be taking in the next classes is your NRI accounts. Okay, so the broad topic was correspondent banking and NRI accounts, right? So we have done correspondent banking. Now we will be dealing with NRI accounts. To understand these, this is also a big topic. We have different types of accounts and we classify them, right? We have several bases on which we differentiate these accounts. So, in order to understand those differences, on what basis are we differentiating, what all can be the classification, to understand that you need to understand these definitions, that who is an NRI, who is a PIO, who is an OCI. That's why we gave you the definitions specifically as per the Income Tax Act and also as per the FEMA 1999, so that you get to know the bigger picture. Okay, right? Now, the next topic which we will be dealing with is your NRI accounts, rupee and foreign currency accounts. So, you all know that now when we have people moving through the Indian boundaries, okay, we have our citizens residing in India, we have other citizens residing in India, we have PIOs, we have OCIs. So, it becomes complicated to extend the banking norms to them, okay, to have these similar banking rules and bank accounts as we have in for the resident of India or for the citizen of India, right? So, there are, for this purpose, we have classified different accounts. We have several NRI accounts which are serving all purposes of all the categories of these individuals. Are you able to understand that? Right. So, we have different accounts to serve the needs, the investments of these individuals, because we cannot have the similar kind of accounts as we are having being a resident of and citizen of India, right? There are differences if you are living outside. Okay, so what are these accounts? These are very important, direct questions have been asked. Okay, so remember, this is very important section, NRI accounts. We will understand what all categories of accounts are there in the NRI accounts. Okay, and then we will understand all the basis, all the criteria on which they have been differentiated from each other. Okay, we'll also try to know all the differences which are there, say between your NRE account, non-resident external rupee account, non-resident ordinary rupee account, foreign currency account which is FCNR, and in case this we have banks, okay, B, a special non-resident rupee account, SNRR account, right? So, we will be dealing with all these things in the next class. What are the things which make them different from each other? What are the provisions, say, in NRE for who can be eligible to open these accounts? NRI can have which account, PIO can have which account, OCI can have which access to which accounts, what facilities are provided to them, are these funds which are placed under these accounts taxable under Income Tax Act of India? Okay, can a person which we can a person operate on behalf of the NRI or OC or PIO, whichever is in concern? Can a person on behalf of them, power of attorney as we say, right, can operate on behalf of them, can operate these accounts? So all these questions will be answered. This is the most important section, okay, right? So NRI accounts, basically in NRI accounts you have rupee as well as foreign currency account, okay. When we classify NRI accounts, as you can see, these are your, these three, this and this are your rupee based accounts, and this FCNR is your foreign currency account. So NRI accounts are both in rupee, in Indian rupee, our currency, and in foreign currency as well. So three of them are in Indian rupee, and one of them known as the FCNR, foreign currency non-resident account, FCNRA or FCNRB, right? They will be in your foreign currency, okay. So NRIs have been provided with various schemes for opening bank accounts and investing in India. The types of accounts that they can open at present are these. So all your non-resident Indians, NRI accounts, non-resident Indians have been provided with different banking facilities for banking related product line, for your investment in India, if they want to invest in India. So they have been provided with, at present, this is updated, okay. So at present you have these categories of banks which you can have, which an NRI can access, right? So we'll see what are these, what are the facilities, what are the restrictions and other clauses. Then you will be able to understand that how can an NRI invest in India, how can an NRI send money to India or send money from India to the source of origin, repatriation which we say, right? So all these questions will be answered in this section. Here you see that, as can be observed from the names, the first 2 and 4 types of accounts are maintained in Indian rupee. As I told you that 3 of them are maintained in Indian rupee, our domestic currency. But one of them, which is the third one, FCNRB, foreign currency non-resident bank account, is maintained in the respective foreign currency, okay. For opening of any non-resident account, the bank has to obtain an application. Now, these banking classifications or these classification of banks will be done later, but you need to understand first that these accounts cannot be opened up out of anywhere. You need to have a license, right? You need to have a license. So in order, you want to open such a non-resident account in India, so that bank which you are dealing with has to obtain an application. The bank which you want to open your account with has to obtain, okay, an application in the prescribed form along with an undertaking that the account holder shall inform the bank the date of arrival as and when he or she returns for permanent settlement. The bank should also obtain necessary documents like copy of passport, visa, employment certificate to confirm the non-resident status. So bank needs to have a written you have to give written application to the bank in the prescribed form, whatever the format is, okay, in which you need to tell the bank that, when is your date of arrival, when are you coming back to India, okay, whenever she returns, okay. If you are planning to permanently settle in India, you have to give your important documents like copy of important documents like passport, visa, employment certificate if required. Only then the bank can open these non-resident accounts for you, okay. So this is the thing. Next we will be dealing with each of these accounts, all of the 4 accounts which are mentioned there in detail, like the particulars and their provisions. We'll compare all of them, right? So that would be interesting. I hope you have understood what we did today, okay, and I hope you got these concepts. So that was it for today's class. I'll meet you in the next class, okay, in the next session when it happens. And till then, just keep on reading these things, keep on revising, right, so that you can understand better, you can understand the further things better, right. I hope it was useful for you. Thank you for staying focused and staying tuned. Have a very good day. Thank you so much.